Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody tonight for the series of meetings we're having. The first one is community development. This one for July 24th, 2023 for point of reference. We do have 4 items on the committee meeting tonight. The first one is the approval of the community development meeting minutes from May 22nd and June 26th, 2023. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Mitchell, seconded by Mr. Oswald.
Question.
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 2 is the matter of a rezoning request for 615 Foster Avenue from residential medium density to residential multi-household low density. Is there a representative that wants to start out and speak? Come up to the microphone, state your name and address of the company for the record.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Pete Schwigerot. I'm with Pivotal Housing, located at 9100 Centerpoint Drive in Westchester, Ohio. Just a real quick background on our company. We've been doing housing now for about 30 years. We are a long-term owner. We're an owner, developer, and manager. We don't build our properties ourselves. We hire local general contractors to do that, so we will be working with local subcontractors and general contractors to identify the right team in your area here. We have around 10,000 units in our portfolio in 16 states, a majority of that here in Ohio. Nearest you, we have a very similar senior development in Huron and as well down in Medina. So if at any point during this process you're interested in seeing one of our facilities, help contact me through staff, and I'll be happy to schedule a tour so you can go see the properties. Huron's about 10 to 11 years old now, so you can see how these properties look through the life of their development. We take great pride in the long-term care of our facilities and owning them long-term. The very first one we built 30 years ago, we still own it, we still manage it. Around 10 years ago, completed an $11 million renovation of that property. So we are here for the long term. We're excited about the opportunity to serve your community with high-quality housing opportunities. We also appreciate Planning Commission's time earlier this month. Thank them for the recommendation for approval. And also are listening to some of the comments that came out of Planning Commission and the community. And want to note as we go through this presentation that we have made some changes since then that we hope will help address some of the comments, concerns that residents made, and also we still feel make for a quality development. As mentioned, the property in question is 615 Foster. If I understand correctly, that's the former Jefferson School, which is lie vacant and semi-abandoned since. It's been clear from the Planning Commission meeting that that building's a nuisance, and it's a challenge to the neighborhood, and continues to get damaged and continues to become a opportunity for mischief and misbehavior and potential further blight and damage. So know this, that as part of phase 1 of this development, that building will be demolished. It will be done so to appropriate standards. Any abatement, whether it be lead, asbestos, and other environmental contaminations, will be addressed and dealt with appropriately. It's very common that we have demolition like this in our development, and our team will be equipped to make sure that that demolition happens appropriately and immediately as part of this development. What we presented at Planning Commission was a 2-phase development, multi-phased, multi-generational development, so that we could serve the broad spectrum of housing for seniors in the community as well as the workforce. We wanted to encourage both initially because as we want to care for seniors as they age and allow for them to age in place, we also want to make sure there's new high-quality options for the workforce, the young families, keeping people in your community that are graduating from here, serving residents that have jobs here and want to stay in the community and live local and live near where they work. We did hear from the neighborhood that there were some concerns about the workforce housing. And one of the things that we are committed to is that we would make this a multi-phase senior development moving forward. We will forego the planned workforce housing, and it would be a two-phase senior development, both phases senior independent living. When we say senior independent living, what does that mean? Number one, our properties are age restricted, 55 plus. That's done with a deed restriction on the property that assures any and all residents of the property at minimum are 55 years of age. In these facilities, in our 10,000 units, we probably have around 2,500 senior units. We probably average around a 78 to 82-year-old resident in this type of facility. So it is folks that we're trying to keep independent as long as we can. The next step in the continuum of care is assisted living and nursing care, far more expensive and far diminished quality of life for residents who need to find those types of care facilities. And so in the independent living, we provide programs and services. We'll be providing transportation, in-home meals, light housekeeping, and healthcare referral, meaning we help link our residents to their healthcare needs, help them with transportation, et cetera, but we're not providing any healthcare ourselves. We're just housing them and providing programs and services that hopefully help them stay independent throughout their life and keep them from needing those other care facilities as absolutely long as possible. So with that, it is age restricted. The two phases we're looking at are roughly 50 units per phase. We're looking at a 3-story building. I can first start with the site plan, and we've got Foster down here at the bottom, Bond up at the top, in the old former Jefferson School site. So phase 1 would be right where this existing school starts. So we would be facing Foster with our building here. Parking kind of tucked into the rear. We're trying to create a courtyard or a little bit of a campus here with one building on the north end, one building on the south end. We'll start on the south end on the existing school site with a 50-unit building. There'd be 3 stories. In it, it would have a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. All of those would have anything and everything you expect in your own home. High-quality units, open floor plans, in-unit laundry rooms and facilities, washer and dryers included in the units, walk-in closets in the bedrooms, everything you would expect in your kitchen, you're going to find in these kitchens. A very nice modern floor plan again. In addition to the units, on the first floor we have on-site management offices. There's going to be a manager there 40 hours a week, typically Monday through Friday. Sometimes they'll set up a 4-day weekday week, and then they'll also be there on a Saturday as well, just to create a little bit of diversity and access for residents over the weekend as well. So that's a full-time position. Then we'll also have a full-time maintenance tech, service tech, who's there to help residents care for their units, changing out air conditioning filters, screens. You have a problem with your unit, they're there to do it. Each floor has its own laundry facility. Garbage facility. So that service tech actually takes garbage out to the dumpster for residents. They only have to get it from their unit to a very common and accessible place on their floor, in their hallway. And then from there, we're getting that garbage down and out for residents so that they're not up and down elevators, out through parking lots all year long. As mentioned, the building will have an elevator. Every unit has a 0-step access point because of that elevator. Every unit is 100% visitable and accessible, built to the ADA standard. In addition to that, it's a green building. We're going to be building to the National Green Building Standard. So super high energy efficient building, keeps utility bills down for residents. It will be the highest quality apartments you have in your community from a green rating standard. In addition to that, on the first floor with those management offices, we have a community room, community center, place where you can hold an event, a function, a birthday party, an anniversary party. It's available to residents 24/7. In addition to that, we have fitness center, a business center, and a theater area. We have a Wii system that we put in there, and ironically, a lot of times we'll see seniors with Wednesday night bowling league on the Wii. We actually do partner with physical therapy where they're actually using those WE systems and these facilities to actually do on-site physical therapy for residents as well. So it's a really wonderful way to keep seniors who are at risk in their own homes and provide a new high-quality option where they have access to services, full accessibility. We get around 40% of our renters out of home ownership. So these are people who simply can't keep up on their home in many cases, don't need a 4-bedroom house anymore. They can elect to sell that house, transition into our facility, and then they have all the amenities that they need and the care that they need to help them stay independent as absolutely long as possible. With that, we do have 2 phases, so there would be hopes that we would come back a year or so later and do the second phase. Initially, again, we proposed that as a workforce phase to try and make sure this was multi-generational. We've taken away that plan and have committed. However, the city deems necessary that when the property goes forward, we'll make sure that deed restriction for senior housing encompasses the entire facility so that we can assure that either through a development agreement with the city or through the deed restriction that we're going to put on the property to begin with. We did show, and this is zoning, so there were some questions about, well, how real are these plans? These are the plans that we plan to bring forward, and I can say with great faith that this is the plan that we will implement. This is a concept of the plan from another project of ours. This is actually almost an identical building to what we have in Huron, 3-story elevated. The front, these buildings are going to be pushed up against the road, so it's kind of got a nice facade, and you can see it's got a broken roof line so that it really looks like a series of smaller buildings combined, brownstones. We're going to see a lot of roof breaks. We've committed that the fronts of these buildings would have at minimum 50% brick, the sides 50% brick, because the sides are also exposed to the road, and in the rear, it would probably transition down to 25% or so brick. Other side, it would be siding and hardy, and we do a shake accent material as well, just so that there's a lot of variety in the way the building looks. But we want it to feel part of the street. We've talked about the potential of doing some built-in parallel parks like you might see. That's more of a question of what the city wants and how they want us to really position this, and a lot of that would be discussed at later stages through your site plan approval process and your architectural review process. But I can say with confidence that this is exactly what we intend to build, and we feel confident we can perform on that. I will shift back to the site plan just to kind of show how this is set up. And we've got the building, again, adhering to the setbacks, but also as close to the roads as possible. So if you're driving down Bond or down Foster, you're going to see the front of the building. The parking's tucked into the rear. Just to give you reference, we average 1.1 residents per unit in this type of facility. So in 1 in every 10 units, there's actually a second resident. And that's just an average. And it's a very, we've got 2,500 units to spread that across. So we are really talking about seniors, widows, singles that need some extra care, and this type of facility provides it, but also very low intensity from a parking standpoint and a traffic standpoint. In addition to the 1.1 residents, so a 50-unit facility, we might have about 55 total residents off of that. And with that, we have around an average of around 75 to 80% of our residents actually driving. We do provide curb-to-curb transportation for residents. That's a commitment we make. And so they don't need a car. They can schedule a ride with us. We coordinate that and it's actually a van system that would come pick them up at the front of the building, take them to their appointment or wherever they want to go, and then bring them back. With those services, we actually do provide a schedule. So we might have Wednesday trips to the Walmart or the other grocery stores in town, to the mall or wherever they deem appropriate, regularly scheduled services. Those are set up. And in that case, we're scheduling a larger bus so that we can bring a group of people and try and create some efficiency there, and also some socialization between residents as well. So parking's in the rear. More than adequate. Everything that we would provide would meet your requirements of code and provide substantial parking from our standpoint, more than we need, so that we would not be presenting any scenarios where on-street parking is necessary. Behind that parking, each phase would have its own amenity. There's a shelter, community garden. We actually do raised planters. We run a water source out there. Each resident has access to their own gardening area. In addition to that, we would be redoing the sidewalk loop around the block. So the block itself becomes a walking loop, and we would have some connectivity of sidewalks between the phases and through that big green space you're seeing in the middle. With this plan, over 50% of the site is actually usable green space. So we are preserving a substantial area for residents to enjoy the amenities, the open space. We would do a street tree package around the entirety of the site so that we could create a nice streetscape. At the corners, some benching, street lights, all of those things would be included. In our parking lots, those are lit. They're also cameraed, so that the entirety of the site would have cameras on it. The building is a secure access point, so every resident would have a fob. They fob themselves into the building. Once they're in the building, the door shuts behind them. They're in a secure environment, closed off. The interiors of the buildings are also cameraed. Each floor, all corridors, the elevator, the entrance points, all have interior cameras as well. So it does create a very secure and safe environment for our residents, but with the exterior lighting and cameraing we do, we can ensure a safe exterior environment as well. So with that, the two phases of around 50 units apiece would total around $30 million in investment. Phase one will be around $15 million total investment. So that kind of speaks to the quality and the cost that goes into this building. We're talking around $275 plus or minus $1,000 per unit, all in cost in the development. That includes top costs. Probably around $195,000 physical construction costs per unit. And again, those green standards are going to make for a super high quality environment, keeping utility bills down, and that's all residents pay as their electric bill. We take care of water, sewer, trash, snow removal. All of those things are built in to the rent, and we are able to keep the rents affordable. We use some funds at the state level. The housing tax credit program is called 4% bonds. It allows us to access funds to build a high quality product, and then the commitment we make to the state is we keep them at an affordable and reasonable level. Seniors, they work off fixed incomes, much as we would all love for our Social Security and pensions to make ends meet. For most residents, they simply don't. And this will give seniors in your community a chance to access a high quality unit at a very reasonable rate. They pay their own rent, but we're able to provide a discount to market of around a couple $100 a unit. If anyone's helped house their moms, mothers, or grandmothers, you go out to a senior IL facility, you're very likely paying over $2,000 a month. And that might include some meal services and things like that. We're able to provide this for a very big discount to market. And we can talk in generic terms to what those rents are, but I mean, except we could be, one bedrooms could be as low as $695 or under for residents, and for a two-bedroom unit, $895 or under. And there are some income bars, 80% AMI. That's around 60, I'm thinking it's like 67,000. And so I don't know how many retired seniors are out there making that amount. So 90% of the seniors in your community are going to meet these income criteria. And we're able to provide that quality discount to market to help your seniors age in place in a high quality environment where we can care for them and oversee them and make sure they're independent as absolutely as long as possible. So with that, we thank you for your time. We hope you're excited about this development. We think it's going to turn what is right now a blight on the neighborhood into a high-functioning new investment in the community. This will be a for-profit entity that owns the property, so it will be generating new taxes. Right now, at the appraised value, it's not really generating much. We will be hoping to access your CRA, which will provide some benefit back to us. But it also, once that CRA burns off, we would be paying the full tax rate. So thanks again, and if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll be happy to come back up.
Actually, you can just remain there. I'm
Okay.
sure there's going to be some questions. And
Absolutely.
actually, I'm going to start out with a question. It's a softball, basically. What is the address in Huron? I'd like to go by it.
Or
what
I'll get
street
you the
is it on?
address, but it's Lakeside Landings, and I'll have to get you the address. I'll actually sit down and get on my phone and get
If it's called Lakeside Landings, I can just
you
Google
should be
it.
able to find it. Yeah.
Huron, Ohio.
You got it.
Okay,
You
thank
see
you.
a building just like that.
Excellent. That's what I'll be looking for.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. Are there any more
Right at the
questions
north
from
end of
anyone
town.
on the committee? Mayor Whitfield.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just going to share from the Planning Commission standpoint. We had a very robust conversation, and the Planning Commission did approve this unanimously. And as Pete mentioned, we had a chance to meet and talk, and you know, I think I want to give a shout out to the residents because their feedback helped us kind of negotiate this term of having it senior focused. And I just want to, you know, give a shout out to all the residents that came out to the Planning Commission and voiced their concerns about the workforce housing because it made a difference in this conversation. And, you know, I was kind of hard on you in the Planning Commission meeting, but I was trying to prepare you for, you know, how we feel about our city and the type of investment we want. And I think you heard that loud and clear. And I just wanted to recognize that you heard their feedback and you adapted the plans. And so that's appreciated. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Any other questions? I'm sorry, Mrs. Davis.
Through you, Chair, I'm not on the committee, so I was wondering if they wanted to say something first, but.
Yeah, but no, you go right ahead.
I
If
can
I
go
see more
ahead.
hands go up, we'll, yeah.
So could he come back to the mic, because I have several.
Yes, ma'am.
That I'd like. And so you stated that 90% of our seniors is in this affordable income bracket of $695 to $895. I'd just like to know, where did you get that number from? Because I live in the area and I know what the seniors got. So how did you determine that they could afford $695 to $895?
Yeah, we've done I should say our market study has been commissioned. They've done the initial demographics. We found that there were around 1,800 plus or minus households within the market area. The market area is typically drawn at around a 3-mile radius around the site, so it's not jurisdictionally based, it's just what they deem the market area. And there's around 1,800 households that meet that income bandwidth of 80% AMI and under. And those rents are actually established off of the HUD calculations. They establish what discount to market we have to, so fair market rent is established, and then we're required typically to be around 15 to 20% under what the fair market rent for the area is.
Well, to you, I'd like to see that report. Also, when you said around 1,800 houses in that Pacific area, and I don't think that's accurate either with the income in that area. My next question is, so for the seniors, so now you're changing it from the just senior only living, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
55 and older,
Yes.
and their only cost is going to be water,
No, their only cost will be the rent plus electric.
or rent plus electric.
Yes.
The water is going to be included in there.
Yes, ma'am.
My next question is, how often are you going to raise the rent how often is your company do the rent increase?
Yeah.
How often is that?
So every lease, and this is a requirement, is a 1-year lease minimum. And we have to do annual leases. And every year, new income bars are established. For what it's worth, until very recently, rents didn't change at all. With the inflation that's occurred over the last 3 years, we have seen, in all cases, rents increasing. And that's just a simple function of the inflation in our environment. Electric bills have gone up, water bills have gone up, the cost of construction's gone up, insurance has gone up. So at minimum, every year, there's a new cert that we would have to do. It's uncommon that annually rents increase. From time to time, rents do increase based on those new calculations. It's almost impossible for me I would just be hypothesizing on how much and when those would occur because they're annual. And again, for a decade, we didn't see increases in the rent increases at all for over a decade. Over the last 2 to 3 years, we've started to see rent increases simply because cost of living has gone up. But those are still established. So every year, when that new bar's set, we're still set at a max rent. We can only charge this much, which is, again, 15 to 20% below market in the area.
Okay, my other question is, so it's going to be a 3-story building, and I've guessed you've looked at the neighborhood. So how high is this building going to be over the residents' homes in that area?
So we actually talked about this at Planning Commission. The existing zoning, and help me if, existing zoning allows for 40 feet in height. At 3 stories, we can stay under 40 feet in height. We did talk to the residents about the elevation that we've shared is around a 45-foot high building. So we would possibly want to go 5 feet more than the existing zoning would allow. Again, part of that is, and what we said is this, if we need to stay 40 feet high, we can stay 40 foot high. One of the things that helps this building kind of feel architecturally pleasing is that we use a higher pitch gable to create a roof with some life and some architectural feel. So if it was, and by the way, if we were to want to do 45 feet, we would need to ask for a variance and go through that process and have another public meeting. And we would only do so if the community thought, well, you know what, a bigger gable roof does create a nicer facade, a nicer architecture for the building, then we would go ask for that variance to 45 feet high. So 5 feet beyond what is allowable now. But again, if the determination was we would rather you keep a low pitch roof and stay within compliance, then we'll do a lower pitch roof and stay within the 40-foot compliance of the existing code. Most of the neighborhood is 1 and 2 story, so the 3rd story is a new height. But we also feel that the scale of this building, while it's a little higher, is also very similar to the school. Much more residential in feel versus institutional and boarded up. But we do feel that a slightly higher pitched roof will give it a little more architectural life as well.
Through you, Chair, can I ask one more question? So financing, have you completed your financing for this, or how is that working?
We're going to be applying for that financing. So
applying?
Yes, so we're going to be applying to the state of Ohio for those bonds that I mentioned before. That application goes in September. We will find out the results and get our award of funding in December. And assuming from there about 6 months to start, which means we would probably hopefully start the building June of 24. It's probably about a 15-month build, which means we would be offering units available for rent end of summer 25.
Thank you.
Okay.
To you, Chair, can I ask Mr. Farkas to come up and tell us what the repercussions of zoning?
Absolutely. We want everybody to come up. However, I want to hear from a few folks for more questions, and then we'll get that in Law Director Deary.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Actually, my question was directed to Mr. Farkas. I noted that the current zoning is residential medium density, and if you could just, I guess, give a Cliff Notes version on what this parcel is zoned for currently, what could potentially be there as far from a zoning standpoint. Oh, sorry.
I brought this. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the Law Director. It's currently zoned residential medium density district, and right now what's permitted outright is anything agricultural, education, a school, group homes, non-commercial recreation, religious places of worship, and single household dwellings. That is pretty much what's permitted in a medium density area. Homes are allowed to be a little bit bigger. Now, the heights in a residential district can be 35 feet. So the proposed building would basically be a little bit higher than that, but based on the current building and structures there, they do have really steep roof pitches. and I think it would actually blend well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tolet.
Mine is more of a comment. I am not on the committee, but should this pass, it will come before full council. First thing, if you tear the building down and find a baseball on the roof, that's mine from 1972. I grew up on Foster Avenue, and the demand in our community for non-medical senior housing is enormous and growing by the day. 690, having a family member in it right now, they're not out there. They're not available today. At $695 to $895, and I understand that's a ballpark, is extremely affordable senior housing 55 and up. Extremely. Yes. So I wanted to make my comment to that to review. There's no places around that are quality like this for that pricing. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mrs. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. First, I want to say kudos to the residents for making your voice heard. You are an example of what you can do. So kudos to you, because there will not be the low-income housing now because you didn't want it and you spoke up for it. But my question to Pete, and I'm sorry I can't pronounce your last name. You said the building's going to be secure.
Yes.
Is there going to be any other security that patrols the parking lots, the area? I think that's important. Have you all considered something like that?
You know, with our full-time management being on site, and then the service tech, and they do kind of pair their hours out so that they're not all overlapping, that's more than adequate. What our residents don't want is feel like they're in some institutional setting where they've got to be policed or monitored. We do think this is a great, stable, quiet neighborhood. We heard from the residents that it's an aging neighborhood, and that really we think the population we're going to be providing new housing options to is very similar to the population and ages in the neighborhood. If you know seniors, they've got those eyes out the windows all the time, and they police themselves. And our biggest challenge is them wanting to police each other and tell them what they can or can't do in the resident next door. And you know, it is a smoke-free environment, and that's about as bad as it gets. Is we got somebody who wants to try and sneak a cigarette in their house, and our team's on top of it. That's why we got a program, and anybody who does that, they're going to get a warning, and if they do it again, they're going to be evicted. Because what happens with these types of facilities, and this is our other commitment to you, we want to see this serve people in your community. And we can commit to a very local marketing effort. We're going to be marketing this in what will hopefully be the new senior center right down the street at the park, and in the community center that's already at the park, and in your libraries, and in your local community, so that people in this neighborhood who maybe are struggling to keep up with their home at this point have first access in. But it is a per fair housing. It's first come, first served. So we got to get that word out and get people on the interested parties list and the wait list, so that the second that becomes available, they're the people that are applying. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Lippian.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I heard you mention that the residents will be able to play Wii bowling at the facility. We should check and make sure that our zoning allows for an esports facility. But one of the things I wanted to say is that this is very exciting, and it's a modern veneer of a building for our legacy residents, you know, and for our treasured senior citizens. And I think it would be a very attractive addition to the neighborhood. So I like a lot of the comments that I'm hearing from my colleagues.
Thank you.
Finance Director Plesky.
Yeah, are the residents allowed to have pets?
Yes, there are some exceptions. I think there are a few breeds that are excluded, and there's a size, a weight, and I'm thinking it's like 40 or 50 pounds. The insulation between these units is unbelievable with the green standards that we're required to do, but it is also a plank, vinyl plank. So the only place you see carpet in these units is in the bedrooms. It's the only place there's carpet. The hallways, corridors, your living space, your kitchen, your family room, bathrooms, all single material plank throughout. So it's a really nice material, but that can click and clank, and so there are really more the size restrictions, just more for safety and security issues.
Mr. Schneider.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry if I missed this part, but I know you had given a timetable for the start, but when was the demolition? What's the timetable for demolition?
It'll be the first thing as part of the construction, so we would hope to get to the start of construction June of '24, and that would be the first thing happen.
Okay, and one more question, if I do through the chair. With the units, are they going to be electric heat with them paying their own electric bill?
It's an all-electric building.
Okay, thank you.
Everything's Energy Star certified.
Mr. Oswald, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So I got a lot of what ifs.
Yes.
Okay, so what if you don't get the funding?
Well, and
okay, so I'll let you go on that one first.
Yeah. We're really excited about this site because it can score well and compete well. It's around a $40,000 application that we're going to make to the state for this funding. And we don't take that lightly. I wish I had money to throw around like that, but we just don't. And so we feel really good about our score. One of the reasons we score is because this neighborhood and area actually is deemed a high opportunity area because of its proximity to amenities, the quality of the neighborhood. So we feel we score really well. I give ourselves a 90% plus chance to have success. At the last meeting, the owner was with us as well, and they committed for a long-term effort here. If we didn't get funding, what we would hope is we would apply in the next round. The state has several different funding tools. They have their 9% bucket and their 4% bucket. The 4% bucket is what we're going to apply for now. The 9% bucket is in February. So there's right around the corner. If we don't get the news we want in this December, we can apply again in February for this other funding. And the owner at the meeting, again, the owner of the site did commit that they are committed to this effort long-term. If we purchase the property, if we do have success with phase one, we will be purchasing the entirety of the property. So from there, it's in our control. We can enter into a development agreement with the city to assure that that phase two is what we say it is. The trick is, to apply in September, you need to have zoning in place. The state wants to see us what you might call pad ready, meaning you got your zoning, all your utilities are available, and you can move forward if the funding comes through. So the question was, can't we just wait to the zoning till you get your funding? Unfortunately not. So there's, to some extent, just a simple leap of faith to say, hey, we're going to put this effort in for all of the right reasons, and we're going to try our very best to bring home the funding.
Through Mr. Chair again. So if it doesn't, Mr. Farkas, and we've changed our zoning, now what does that open the door for other projects? What types of projects?
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Oswald, if it is rezoned to residential, multi-household, low-density district, you're permitted to put up boarding and lodging homes, educational institutions, group homes as regulated in section 113710, multi-household dwelling units, non-commercial recreation, religious places of worship, and 2 household dwelling units. So it's a little increase from the residential.
So if we do pass a zoning, we're not getting ourselves into too much trouble. I'm always for economic development. It seems like they've got a good plan out there. I don't know the neighborhood. It seems to me a big, beautiful building like this surrounded by a lot of homes is a little bit different, but it gives the capability of doing something with our elderly for a reasonable cost. If it's done right, of course, you can't always know what's going to happen in the future. But if this doesn't go through, goes so far, it turns into Section 8, that's my other worry. We don't want to see that happen. And is this an ownership and then it's being partially funded? Is that how the funding that you go off of?
Can you say that question again? I'm sorry.
You're going to go off and try to get funding, you know, for this project, yes. But it's not 100% of the cost of the project?
Yeah, it's not 100% of the cost. It's around 70%, and then the rest is financed through traditional mortgage.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like basically a down payment, you're 20%, but you're gonna have
Yeah,
30%.
essentially, if you think about your typical mortgage, it might be 80%
Right.
with 20% equity.
Okay.
And in order to provide those rents at a discounted rate, you almost have to flip it where it's 80% equity through the bonds we're gonna secure with the state, and about a 20% perm debt.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lippian.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Well, one of my colleagues had asked you about how much the rent would go up year by year, and you mentioned inflation. We just had a report come out recently that said inflation might not go as high as was previously forecast, and as we know, the Fed's vote are going to announce on July 27th how much they're hiking interest rates. It could be more than 0.25%. It could be less than. But my question to you is do you have a forecast estimate after the first year? And you don't have to say the exact percentage increase that might apply, but maybe a floor percentage if inflation is low and a ceiling percentage if inflation is high, just some percentage range of how much rents might increase.
Yeah, I guess the best way to look at it is from the underwriting perspective. We have to put together a pro forma that shows how this property is going to operate over the next 15 years. And as an underwriting standard or requirement of the lenders, of the investors, anybody that's involved in the project, of the state who issues the bonds, they show I think it's a 2% inflationary feature. So they're basically saying, not that the rents are going to go up 2% every year, but you have to show your model could support that. And financially, because they also trend expenses up at the same percentage. And actually, unfortunately, expenses are going up at more like 4 to 6%. Right now. So the model would show this very, even 2% modeling, but it's only for modeling purposes. Every year, HUD comes out with that new max rent calculation, and we work off of that. If they stay the same, which if I look back at the last 12 years, they've been the same 10 out of those 12 years, essentially. I should say maybe 7 out of those last 10 years. And so historically, they don't go up. When they do go up, it's normally $5-10 a month.
Just to follow up.
Mr. Lippian.
So thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up, so it could be less than 2%, but in your pro forma, you have to build out that at least you can maintain it at a 2% yearly increase if you had to.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, it's possible they go down. And in environments like 2008, when we had our last economic crisis, the actual rents went down. And so we actually, on the next lease, we're signing new leases at a lower rate.
Okay, seeing no questions at the moment, I'm going to ask if there were some citizens that did want to speak. They can just come right up to the microphone. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Carol Hobart. I live at 440 Olivet Drive. I'm speaking for my friend Carol Perkins. She lives at 609 Bond Street, and her front porch faces the field. And my concern is that he doesn't have funding. We need to change code. Here we go, changing zoning codes again. And no guarantee of this going in, so then what? We get some guy that, I'm going to buy this property, I'm going to stick Section 8 in there. And there we go. Whole neighborhood goes down the tubes because you got Section 8, because there's no guarantee. And I can see why these people are a little anxious about this, and my friend is too, and she doesn't like the height that this building's going to be, because if you go into this neighborhood, it's all surrounded by very nice old homes. Then all of a sudden, in the middle of this, is going to be great big tall buildings. I like that it's been changed to senior. Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to say thank you to you, because I was at the commission meeting, and I felt like you were with us as the neighborhood. And I say us because this is my friend, and I'm with her a lot. And I just wanted to thank you for doing that. So that's my concerns, is doing the zoning, and he doesn't have any funding. He can't guarantee he's got the funding. Then, okay, so he doesn't get it in December. What happens in February? What happens if we do the zoning? Then who's that guy going to sell it to? And what are we going to have in there? I mean, to you it doesn't sound like much, but to a little neighborhood like this, it's kind of scary to think what could go in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, Mayor. My name is Ms. Tolbert, 520 Bond Street. Have been in the area over 52 years. I am one that was at the meeting on last Tuesday, I want to say. And I too want to thank you, Mayor, for the support. Also, I guess you have to pray after hours, and I do want to say thank you, sir, for hearing us when we spoke to you outside, and that you made this difference in the change from here. But I am still concerned as to what will happen if it is rezoned. Do it becomes a Wicks Villa, or whatever it will? Because as the lady stated before, we are a senior group over there on Bond, Foster, and Madison, which you see here tonight. And we don't have many children in the area, so we're used to a little quietness. And I have to make a comment when you're talking about somebody peeping out the window, looking out the window can tell you about the neighborhood. My neighbors looked at me as if I'm that person, but I'm only protecting them to make sure everything is good. 520 Madison and Jefferson's area. And I just want to say that I do thank you, sir, for changing that, because I prefer to see senior citizens do a little bit better than some other younger family in the area. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
My name's Valerie France. I'm at 519 Bond Street. We've lived there for about a dozen years, across from Miss D, who does look out the windows every day. But she's our security system, and we're grateful for her. I had a comment, but my first thing was a question. I want to make sure I heard right. The 55 plus is for all residents, not like they can't be a elderly person with their grandkids living with them. Is that correct?
Under the mic. I do want to just clarify that, yeah, and all residents on the lease are 55 plus. There are cases, and I can tell you across our 2,500 units, we've had this case less than a handful of times. If a grandparent is the true caregiver, meaning licensed and legally the caregiver of the grandchild is eligible to be at the property and living in the unit up until the age of 18. And at the age of 18, adulthood, they are actually required to leave the property because, again, all adults have to be on the lease and all leasees have to be 55 plus.
Thank you. We do really appreciate the changes that were made and that we felt like we were listened to. But a concern I have, and just going forward, because I'm sure if this passes today, there's multiple phases of what next. But as a resident in the neighborhood, the only reason I knew about the previous meeting and this meeting were because of my neighbor letting me know. So a better way of getting the word out to the neighbors for something that's of such concern to us so that we can attend these meetings would be very helpful. I don't know what the protocol is or how these things work, but I know we would definitely come to anything regarding this because this affects, I mean, our home is our only big asset that we own, and we are incredibly concerned about the value diminishing on our home. Hopefully this would improve the neighborhood, and I'm not discounting that idea, but if it doesn't, this is our nest egg that will disappear, and that's very frightening to us. So I appreciate some of the comments I heard from council members noting those types of concerns, but as things go forward, I assume you have to address like the traffic pattern in the neighborhood. Is the parking situation really sustainable in a neighborhood that size? And what about things like the sewer and storm drains and other infrastructure that is going to be impacted by this development? I can only assume. I'm not an expert on any of that. My primary concern is my property value, and I'm wondering if there's any way to know, and this is just a question, whether when this type of development has gone into similar neighborhoods, if there are such, how it's impacted the residents in those areas and their property values, because that would be of utmost importance to us. So I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody?
Chairman?
I'm sorry, yeah, Mayor Whitfield.
Yeah, so thank you, Ms. Franz, for your comments. The one comment you made in regards to public notice. So right now, our public notices are for adjacent properties nearby. But Director Connor, one of the things I wanted to ask you about publicly, because I think this is a solution. As you mentioned, when this goes to the design phase, it'll have to come before this body again. When we do our utility bills, isn't it zoned based on the neighborhood, so we could specifically put the meeting notice for this meeting to that zone? And you're nodding your head yes. So we can look at creative ways to make sure the minimum is the properties nearby, but I think to your point, with a big development like this, we probably want to have greater, broader notice that goes out. So again, we're looking at 2024, so if I'm still around, we'll be doing that. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Was there anybody else in the audience that wanted to make some comments? Okay, seeing none, and has everybody's questions been answered? Here's they have. I'll read the committee report. We have considered the matter of a request for rezoning of property located at 615 Foster from residential medium district to residential multi-household low density district. This matter was passed by Planning Commission on July 11th. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second. Motion made by Mrs. Mitchell and seconded by Mr. Lippian.
Call for the question.
Question on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just for purposes of where we will be as far as the calendar, in consulting with Ms. Rosado of the clerk's office, the earliest that the notice will be able to be published for the public hearing. That public hearing will be the first council meeting in September, just to give everyone an idea of where we will be with that. We'll try to get the legislation together so there can be a first reading at the August meeting, but the public hearing will be the first meeting in September.
Thank you, Law Director Deary. Mr. Oswald?
I guess that was going to be my question, if this is going to have public hearings, because at that point, can the residents, I think that's the biggest thing, is what the residents want over there, and there was only a few people that knew maybe what was going on. So I'm wondering, are we going to be able to still get input from the residents on what they want over there?
I would have to say so, yes.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, at the public hearing, Council President will ask for all proponents and opponents to have their opportunity to speak. That's the purpose of the public hearing.
Okay, thanks.
And a vote cannot be taken by the full council until the public hearing is held.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 3. That is the matter of a new liquor license to Hubert Oliver Legacy 34 LLC located at 460 Cleveland Street. This would be a permit class D5. At this particular time, there are some concerns by the Elyria Police Department and the zoning officials. So I'd ask Chief Pelko, did you want to speak on this issue?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. As Chief of the Police Department, when this came across my desk, I brought some concerns to me. The first concern was there were some local businesses in the area that had been approached by Mr. Oliver inquiring if they could use their parking lot after hours. That concerns me that there's not going to be enough parking in the area for this liquor establishment. In talking with Mr. Farkas from the building department, it's zoned only for 20 persons at the business. And if they're already seeking more parking spaces, that's going to raise some concerns for traffic and some congestion in the area and where people are going to park. So that was my first concern. My second concern is the saturation of liquor establishments that we're going to have in the area. We already have Sidelines, The Bistro, Chris's Place, Smitty's, Train Station, and Cookies 10-Pin. So I'm concerned that there might be some oversaturation of these type of facilities, businesses in the city of Valeria. Those were my main concerns. I did talk with Chief Pernesti today. He had a concern about the fire code for the building, if they're going to be having some people in there. I can't elaborate on that, but he just asked me to bring that up to you guys, that he believes there will be some fire code situations that need to be addressed in there as well. So I'll be happy to answer any questions or anything.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Are there any questions? Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. Chair. When I was looking through that, it said alcohol consumption, but it didn't say sale of alcohol. Is it different, or did I read that different in what he's going after for a license?
So my understanding with that is that you can only drink it on facility there. You can't sell it to go. But I would have to inquire with them, but that's what I'm pretty sure they mean. You have to consume it at their facility.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other, Mrs. Mitchell?
Through you. Chief Pelco, have you spoken with Mr. Oliver to express your concerns?
I have not. I have not spoken to him. And I will say that part of my concern too is there was an event center a block down and across the street where they had alcohol. We had nothing but problems at that location. And the last thing I want to see is more problems due to a liquor establishment in this area.
Understood. Mr. Chair, through you, but that establishment, that event center, they did not have a liquor license, did they?
No, I don't believe they did, no.
And they were an after-hour joint, is that not correct?
Yes.
And I believe Mr. Oliver does not plan on having an after-hours establishment. I met with him, and he wants to open a place that sells food, and, and you can have a drink. So I guess I understand your concerns. I absolutely understand. But we're condemning him before he's even opened the door to his establishment.
I'm just, on behalf of the police department, I'm voicing my opinions. I had people from the businesses come and he spoke to them about getting parking there after hours. I didn't talk to Mr. Oliver to see what after hours is, but he approached the local businesses about after hours parking. So.
Mr. Chair, if I may, through you, Mr. Sarah is having a meeting with Mr. Oliver tomorrow. Can you expound upon that, Mr. Sarah?
I can. There was some, through you, Mr. Chair, there was some concerns from the residents, and then had a discussion with Mr. Oliver and Rosalind, I believe her name is. They had seemed to have addressed some of the things that the residents were concerned about, but they were not there at the time when we had the discussion. So we did set up a meeting where a few of the residents could come, ask questions, take a look at the situation, and then I'll move on from there depending on what the residents want.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, if I may, just one more question. To Mr. Farkas, if I may, why is his capacity only 20 people?
Mr. Chair, through you to Mrs. Mitchell. The site is currently zoned business neighborhood district. And to get to that question, to answer that, I'm going to first read the purpose of what a business neighborhood is supposed to be. Okay. And then I'll get to your answer. It says here, per our codified ordinance 115601, it is the purpose of a business neighborhood district to permit and encourage the establishment of small convenience businesses and personal services to be located in close proximity to residential areas in which they are serving. The location of the business should be of a nature limited to commercial activity, should be developed to avoid traffic congestion and to the surrounding neighborhood area. Now, I'll read the permitted uses that you can have right out without any kind of variances. Child care facilities, clubs, educational institutions, financial institutions, neighborhood retail business, non-commercial recreation, offices, personal services, religious places of worship, restaurants, provided the seating capacity is limited to no more than 20 people, and any other use determined by the building inspector. So this is straight out of our ordinance.
I'm biting my tongue.
I will say, there's a caveat. You could request a conditional use.
Mhm.
It says, restaurants with seating capacity greater than 20 people. So they do have an out where they could come before Planning Commission, request a conditional use for more people, whatever that number is, I don't know. Now that is in itself cracking Pandora's box,
Sure.
because when you add more people, you need more parking.
Sure.
Then if I go down the building code realm, you need more bathrooms, it can snowball.
Mr. Chair, just one more time, if I may. It is my understanding when I met with Mr. Oliver and Ms. Wade that they tried very hard to find a building that they could buy. And there was nothing available, or when they thought they had something, I'm looking at Ms. Colbert because she knows what I'm talking about. When they thought they had something, it kind of got snatched out from under them. So all I'm saying is, as I said before, we're condemning Mr. Oliver, and he hasn't even opened the door yet. But Ms. Colbert, and Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, if you could expound upon his looking for a building, thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mrs. Mitchell. We had worked with Mr. Oliver and Ms. Wade for several months. They had specifically indicated interest in multiple parcels that were urban renewal parcels. So with that, there was a legacy. We had to go work through HUD to see if they were available to be sold. And then they would have had to have been rezoned. So that added another level of difficulty because the city was unable to petition for the rezoning itself, according to Mr. Taylor. So they would have had to purchase the parcels and then try to get them rezoned if they could be sold according to the HUD guidelines. So we worked for several months to see if there was something we could do to not put that risk upon them to purchase the parcels and then have to try to get the rezoning. In the meanwhile, we started our comprehensive land use plan and the rezoning, and it was determined that we should not sell these parcels or go further in the process until the zoning had, we had, as a city, gone through the rezoning process. And that was not specifically, I mean, that was kind of the standard we set for all parcels in the city at that time, that we should get through that process. So we're not unwittingly selling parcels for uses that we would plan on changing the zoning later on. And that was something that we had control over as owners of the parcels. So we had worked with them, trying to get that to work, trying to find other sites. You know, at that time they were looking at new construction, not a building, an existing building. And then I heard from them on St. Patrick's Day that they had put in an offer that was accepted on the Cleveland Street building.
Okay, next was Mr. Oswald and Mr. Lippian.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I too had conversation with Ms. Wade and Mr. Oliver and was thoroughly impressed. In the beginning, I caught wind that this was going to be a social club. I told the chief, I don't want it. I don't think it's right. There's going to be problems, on and on and on. And they're asking for parking, which is going to be an issue. I had a conversation with them, and I was impressed on how they are handling the situation. They're getting special funding, so they have to approach it the way the funding wants. They have to get their financing squared away. They have to get their liquor license. That's why are they getting a liquor license? Well, that's what they were told to do. So they've got the project drawn through an architect. They got a contractor. So they're doing everything the way I think they're supposed to. They've been talking with the members of council to let them know. Now, I can see what they're trying to do, and if everything works out great the way that they want, yeah, but we never know. That's the problem. And they want a place that's more African-American, places that they can go and feel comfortable and have dinner, drinks, and have their fun. And I get it, that's great. They want to have a key card and a membership. That would be great. I told him he's going to be jumping through a lot of hurdles. Because the biggest thing to me is the amount of people you got in there and how many cars you're allowed to have there. And that's when it comes into the residents that live in the area and you're parking in their spots or whatever, and there's going to be issues. And I never realized the amount of illegal issues that are going on in that area as it is, which they really didn't know much about. I think, to me, before we make that decision, I think that Mr. Sarah should have his meeting, and then I think Mr. Pelko should have, or Chief Pelko maybe, should have a conversation and get a feel, because right now I just think it needs a little time before, and let's get some more information. I don't want what happened right down the street. And I know the chief doesn't want to be going there every week, you know, with an issue or something going on. So I think maybe until we could all feel comfortable, we need to do a little bit more research and talk, some meetings, and then we can make some decisions. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Unfortunately, Mr. Oswald, we don't have luxury of time. The application is in with Ohio Liquor Control, and they are requiring a response as to whether council would like to have a hearing or not have a hearing. In fact, they're requiring that there be an answer by the end of the month, and as it is, we're going to be tardy on that. So just a reminder to the committee, the question to be answered is, would council like a hearing or not, or are you not requesting a hearing on this matter? Obviously, it's not within our authority to grant or deny the liquor license. The issue is whether we want to have a hearing on this matter. Obviously, if we do have a hearing, we will need to go in as a city and state our reasons for why we think that this license should not be granted. And you've heard thus far what the reasoning is, and I'll let you go from there. But I just want to let you know that there does need to be some action taken.
Go finish up.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. So I guess, you know, if the chief says that the police department would like a hearing, I guess I have to kind of follow his knowledge and what he believes, although I'd rather not have to do that. But that's my opinion, so I don't know what anybody else would say. But if that's what he feels we should do, I think that's what I would say.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lippian.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just listening to some comments from my colleagues and from the police chief. I've heard the police chief enumerate a list of other establishments that are serving spirituous alcohol in the vicinity, and he's concerned about oversaturation. I'm hearing his concerns about parking highlighted by understanding that different businesses were approached to allow parking after hours. Obviously, regardless of what the capacity of the building is, the capacity of the permit, as I understand it, is 20. So I would just like to offer a cautionary tale from Ward 1. I'm not saying that this is going to be the exact same business, but I'm hearing something that's analogous to something that's been going on in Ward 1 for a while. We have a business over in Lexington, and it's similarly situated where it does not have a lot of parking to satisfy the customer demand, and it sells spirituous liquor and beverages, and it's open after hours, and it is probably the number one or number two complaint just by itself that I receive as a council person. Problems at 2 a.m., purportedly bottle rockets getting shot off, fights. I even went to answer a call there at 2 a.m. to see it with my own eyes, and I watched a car get out of the parking lot that it was using and ram into another car and just create an accident. And I filled out a witness statement because I watched it happen. I don't want to see this bar become, or this establishment become like that bar in Ward 1. I'm not saying that it is going to be. I just want to offer a cautionary tale that I've seen this movie before, and I think we should do everything that we can to avoid it. And if requesting a hearing is our way of avoiding it, because there's certain parts of this decision that we can't fully make right now with the information we have, that might be a courteous thing to do, given the situation.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Simmons.
Thank you, through you, Chair.
First of all, I think they're unjustly being targeted because the business down the street wasn't after hours. I also have been talking with them from the conception of this project, and why would you go through city council and do all the provisions if you wanted an after-hour joint? You could have one at your house. You wouldn't have to have all the guidelines. The provisions, like, did they know about the parking? Did they have somebody guide them? Because I talked to them, and they wanted to talk to the chief of police because they wanted to let everybody know that this was not the same business that was down the street, that they're not trying to have some fly-by-night little after-hour joint. They're trying to go by the rules. I thought it was very classy of them to incorporate city council to let us know what they were doing. They've been on this journey for a while because they started with me because they actually wanted it in the 5th Ward, but due to provisions, they weren't able to get it there. So I'm saying Hubert does not have, he's never been in trouble. Why are we asking for a hearing? Why are we treating them like they're the place over in Lexington or they're the place down on Cleveland Street? Why aren't we giving them a fair chance?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Mrs. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I concur with Mr. Simmons. As I said before, we're condemning him, and he has not even opened the door yet. If he wanted an after-hour spot, like Diane said, Mrs. Simmons said, you could have one at your house. You could put a bottle on right here, and you got an after-hours joint. He has spent money on an architect, so he's not going to be a fly-by-night place if he's spending money on an architect and a contractor. He's trying to do everything the right way. He's reached out to council, which I commend him for. He invited us to go down to his spot. I don't know if he reached to everyone, but to go down to the spot and see what it is and see what he's doing. All I'm saying is, let's give him a chance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Lippian.
Thanks, through you, Mr. Chair. And again, I have to repeat, I'm not saying that this is going to be like what's on Lexington for Ward 1, but I am seeing a lot of analogous situations here. And one of the analogous situations here is I don't think when that establishment was started that they ever intended it to become what it was. But it became that. And it is absolutely, without question, one of the largest disturbances in the ward. It is probably the #1 problem I've had, and kudos to the police chief in the last 3.5 to 4 weeks, knock on wood. There hasn't been as many problems because a solution was forged and it appears to be making a difference. But I don't know what's going to happen if these other establishments say, no, you can't use our parking. You know, what happens then? Where do they park? But what would the consequence be?
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Lippian. As myself and Mrs. Calvert have had multiple meetings with Mr. Oliver and Mrs. Wade, we've navigated the zoning code, because this is the first step, to try to give them the best possible chance of getting this to go through. Unfortunately, the way the code is written, they have some challenges that they have to overcome. And that was one, presenting, if it's a restaurant, you're only limited to 20 people. With the existing business on hand that was there, the loan store, they had enough parking, I don't quite know the number, I think it's around a dozen, maybe 15, that suited that particular need for a business. Now you're changing that business to something where you have an assembly type use where it's going to require more parking. If this is approved, it's going to evoke many variances for probably parking, for one, maybe a dumpster location. If they're going to have a restaurant, it's going to have needs for refuse. Not saying that it's impossible, but there are challenges that have to be overcome. So with that being said, our parking ordinance requires, if it's a restaurant, for every 150 square feet of space, you have to have one parking stall. Now, I don't have the data in front of me to do the math, to know what that is currently looking like, but they're going to need quite a few spaces.
Thank you. Mr. Corbin.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I am not a member of this committee, but I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak. I met with both Ms. Wade and Mr. Oliver. I was very impressed. I made it very clear this is not my ward. I was very impressed with the presentation that they gave to me. I understand that Mr. Oliver is a lifelong Elyria resident. I understand, having listened to Mr. Farkas and Chief Pelko, that there are issues that have to be overcome, but I agree, if there's any way that if we can help them overcome these issues, if we can help them meet the obstacles that are in front of them, they came across as having a plan. They do not want any trouble. I know that there have been some spots in the city where Chief Pelko is constantly running and putting out fires. I was very comfortable in meeting with both of them, and it was a very open, honest discussion. I asked about the menu. I asked when they wanted to open. Listening tonight to the issues, but specifically the parking and other environmental areas, I would still like to see this go on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So Mrs. Simmons and then Mr. Lippian again.
They're gonna have 40 and over, and he said if he contact chief. So we're gonna have security that will eliminate a lot of problems. So he's willing to do what he needs to do to make everything a success. And you know, like I said, we can't condemn him from what happened down the street over in another ward. We need to try to help people open businesses in the area. We need, you know, let's not condemn them. Let's see if we can find an alternate route that they can, you know. We're requesting a hearing like he's got 5 felonies. He has never been in trouble. Why are we requesting a hearing?
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Simmons. Mr. Lippian.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. And again, I think it bears repeating for the third time. I mean, I am not, and I don't think anybody on this council is condemning Mr. Oliver as if he were those other businesses in those other wards. Merely what I am trying to do is offer a cautionary tale for an analogous situation in Ward 1. And to the problem, just anticipated, what if we need security? Security arrives. I have been on Lexington at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I've stood with the police, and I've watched what's happened, and there's only so much the police can do under certain situations. It can really get concerning. I mean, I watched people harass the police. I heard expletives used toward the police. I saw and heard things that I wished I didn't see or heard, let alone live right next to it. And again, I emphasize, I'm not saying this is going to be the same thing, but a cautionary tale. So I do have one question. I have two, actually, but the first is, what's at stake for this business? Because I do want to hear the empathetic concerns of Mrs. Simmons and Mr. Corbin and others, because we don't want to unduly unfavor them. So what is at stake for this business if the liquor permit is not carried out for them? Do they lose certain financing? What's at stake for them? I just heard someone say they don't get a loan. So that's what I'm asking. What's at stake for them if this liquor permit doesn't pan out for them? Okay.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Lippian. I'll do my best to answer that. I do not know that it's a condition of their loan. I would say it's probably very significant to their business model, and it could jeopardize the success or the projected success of their business. You know, they do plan on hosting some events there that they've shared with myself and Mr. Farkas. So I think, you know, it would make their business model potentially unsuccessful. I would have to allow them to answer that fully, though.
I think that's what he was saying.
And then, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. My follow-up question then, because there's been some discussion about what it means when we request a hearing. Maybe this is a good question for Director Deary. If we request a hearing, just to make sure I grasp this correctly, we aren't necessarily saying that we don't want the facility to have a liquor permit. We are outsourcing our jurisdictional decision about this to the state. Is that correct?
No, through you, Mr. Chair. No, essentially, we're asking for a hearing because we are challenging their application. And we are asking the opportunity to bring our evidence to liquor control as to why they should be denied their liquor license. Obviously, only Ohio Division of Liquor Control has the ultimate decision as to whether or not to grant the license, but we as the local government have the right to challenge the application and bring forth our reasoning of why we believe the entity that's made the application should not be granted one, and that is why we are asking for the hearing. So if there's basically things of concern that we think that liquor control should know about, that's why we're asking for the hearing.
I would like to just ask one question to the director since of the topic. When such hearings do take place, as they have in the past with other establishments, the challenge to the business itself, they also have equal time at the hearing to make a defense in their case?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I just want to make sure of that. Okay, Mr. Lippian.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, and that's perhaps the opportunity that would be most important for this business owner, is to have that opportunity to make his case. If we can't have him make his case, unfortunately, he's not here today. We can't delay this any further, as Director Deary has pointed out. So at least if we request a hearing, he has the opportunity to make his case.
Okay, I see Mr. Schneider.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I also met with the applicants, and they have a solid game plan. They have no intentions of any after hours going on at this property. They're investing hundreds of thousands of dollars into renovation and making it better than, another vacant building on Cleveland Street. They have a plan. They have a good plan, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Well, at this point, I would say if anybody wants to, I'm going to read the committee report, and then we can get a motion. We have considered the matter of a new liquor license permit as requested by Hubert Oliver, Legacy 34, LLC, located at 460 Cleveland Street in Elyria. This would be a Class D5, permit D5. Can I get a motion? Mr. Lippian.
I would like to make a motion that the committee does request a hearing.
The motion is on the floor that the committee does request a hearing. The motion is on the floor. I hear no second. At this point, with no second, the motion does die.
Mr. Chair, I will make a motion that the city does not request a hearing.
Okay, the motion has been made by Mrs. Mitchell that the city does not request a hearing.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider.
Call for the question.
Question. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Was it one nay? Please raise your hand for ayes. Okay, and Thank you, thank you. Item 4 is the matter of a liquor license transfer from Aldi 426 Oberlin Road to Aldi 38275 Chestnut Ridge Road. This would be a permit Class 1, C2, D6. There were no concerns or issues by the Elyria Police Department or zoning officials. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I'll read the report. We have considered the matter of a liquor license transferred from Aldi number 59 at 426 Oberlin Road to Aldi number 59 located at 38275 Chestnut Ridge Road in Elyria. Permit Class C1 and C2. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, you must just make the description.
I move that we do not request a public hearing.
Okay, Mr. Schneider has made the motion that we do not request a hearing.
Second.
Second by Mr. Oswald.
Question.
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Mitchell.
before we move into the joint meeting, can we take a 5-minute recess?
Okay, that's a good suggestion. We're going to take a 5-minute recess and then we'll come back.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'm gonna have everybody get to their seats. 1 minute.
I don't know how y'all sit.
Yeah.
It's bad. My coat.
Okay, we're gonna start the meeting in about a minute, so please get back to your seats. Immediately.
Going against the chief.
Oh, yeah. Trying to get those. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Okay, at this time, I'll ask Mr. Stewart to please call call finance for the joint meeting.
I'll call finance order.
Thank you. Two items on the agenda for the joint meeting. First item is the approval of the joint meeting minutes from May 8th and May 22nd, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Mitchell and seconded by Mr. Oswald.
Question.
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Next item is the matter of creating a new city committee titled the Diversity and Equity and Inclusion Committee. HR Director Yusefi.
Okay, sorry. I want to introduce first, I have two members of our DEI committee here with me, Mary Gibbs and Debbie Mason, and Terry Corzan, who was here earlier, is also on our committee. So I just wanted to recognize them first. Not too long ago, this city council voted to declare racism as a public health crisis. From this action, the idea of the DEI committee was born. Now that we have recognized racism as a public health crisis, we need to build on the work that you have already started. In that resolution, council committed to promoting equity and improving the quality of life of minorities. It's only a matter of time before we are asked as a body, what are we doing about this? Let's start with our own work community. Systemic racism exists everywhere. Glenn Harris, president of Race Forward, defines it as the complex interaction of culture, policy, and institutions that hold in place the outcomes we see in our lives. Illyria's 2020 resolution on racism states that racism acts on systemic, institutional, and interpersonal levels, all of which operate throughout time and across generations. Talking about racism or implicit bias is not an attempt to shame or guilt anyone. It is about spreading awareness so that it can be properly addressed. One of the actions we are taking is the formation of the DEI committee. DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. This committee is working to ensure the diversity, equity, and inclusion for all employees throughout the city. We will engage in discussions around practices and inclusion in the workplace. We will focus on the education of staff. We will create a safe space to allow any and all input from every worker. We are asking council to support this initiative by passing the ordinance for several proven reasons. Employee recruitment and retention depends on diversity and inclusion. Diversity improves innovation, and diverse teams make better decisions. Organizations that fail to take proactive steps to prioritize DEI may find themselves perilously behind their competition, unable to attract and retain quality workers, and struggling to meet organizational goals. The 2020 resolution states that the City of Elyria is committed to engaging community partners. The DEI committee would like to be your partner. We are humbly asking council to build on the work you started and to act as an ally for DEI regardless of an individual's age, race, color, religion, disability, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, or status. The first step is the passing of the ordinance establishing this official city committee.
Thank you. Mr. Lippian.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, for Ms. Yousefi, who will serve on this committee and who picks the members?
It's by volunteer, so we ask people to volunteer, and we've approached people who we thought might be interested in this. It's completely voluntary, so you know, there's no one's forcing anyone to be on the committee.
Mr. Lippian.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So, what is systemic racism, and how would this committee ameliorate it?
Systemic racism is often unconscious and it's also implicit bias, where it is spread so much across our culture from many, many, many centuries of discrimination and prejudice that it has become such a part of the fabric of policies and institutions in this world, in this country especially, I think, that is just completely unfair. This committee would like to review policies, look at different events that we can hold. What can we do to educate our work staff to make sure that we are trying to be part of the solution? Just as President Stewart said when we in the article from the Chronicle Telegram, when we did this vote in 2020 on racism as a public health crisis, you said we want to be part of the solution. So we're trying to be part of the solution.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. If the bias is implicit and not explicit, so you can't see it with the naked eye, but you presume it's there, how do you and how would the committee resolve to reduce bias that is implicit or hidden or not clear to the naked eye and even unconscious to produce, as you describe, more fairness?
Implicit bias can be touched. We can find it. We have to be able to recognize it for what it is, and once that happens, we can work to change it. You want to respond?
Yes. Through you, Chair, if it's okay. Part of this is an awareness, and part of it is the awareness that bias exists and a recognition that bias exists, and we have to be intentional on how we begin to address those things. Training, education, awareness, engagement are part of this process. There are certain things we found out in the HR world. Things like a name on an application can create bias, and there was no intentionality about creating the bias. And we found that when you have applications and you remove the name, and you just look at the accomplishments of the individual and what's written in the resume, you find out that the name, depending on what that name is, has an actual impact on the hiring process. We found, and this is not just based on, as I would say, a white person looking, but anyone. Bias is a thing that affects all of us. So I need to be educated and understand my implicit bias. So it's not that you have bias and I don't. We all have bias. So part of this is that enlightenment and that awareness where it's not accusatory. It's bias doesn't discriminate. It's part of all of us. And we didn't acquire it because we wanted to. So part of the role of the committee is to make sure that we are receiving training and that we're being in a space where we can talk about these things and we recognize them. So the committee has done some great work already in terms of engaging its folks in some training. So that part of it is just being enlightened and being aware state where someone's talking to you and training you and teaching you so that you don't feel offended, so you don't feel like you're accused of something or feeling a lot of guilt, but placed in a space where you can learn without feeling that pressure, that difficult conversation. And it takes difficult conversations and allows us to be able to have those in a safe space. So we think that that's part of the culture and climate that we want to create in our city for our employees. We think it's very important for our supervisors to understand their own bias and how that can impact how they treat employees. It makes them better supervisors. It makes us better parents. It makes us better people. So that's part of what this committee is charged with doing, is seeking out the right training, the best practices, and then making sure our employees have that access, again, to create a better culture and a better climate that we all will benefit from.
Thank you. Mr. Libby.
Thanks. Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Williams. What is meant by equity, and why is equity used instead of the word equality, for example?
Equality is about everyone getting the same thing. Equity is about everyone getting what they need to succeed. It's a very different concept. Just because I went to college and I was able to get some loans, I was given loans to go to college. Maybe someone else was able to go to college without loans. The equity is that I was able to secure financing so that I could go to college.
Okay. Mr. Lippian, are you done with your questioning?
I may have more, but I'll defer to my colleagues.
I'm sorry.
I may have more at a later point, but I'll defer to my colleagues.
Okay. So next hand I saw up was Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the one thing I've seen in here, council shall provide to the Human Resources Department such funds and employees as it determines necessary for human resources. So how much does this cost? Have we had funds in place for this? Do we have this in our budget? What's as far as that? And when can they come up? What's the deal with all that part? Thank you.
Actually, we already have a DEI committee fund line in the HR budget. I believe this year it was $10,000.
Okay.
We are also planning to doing fundraising so that we can help to alleviate some of the costs to the city also.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Mrs. Davis.
Through you, Chair. My question is, so it says volunteer, and I was wondering, in Part C it says treasurer. And if you volunteer for a committee, why do you have a treasurer? If you're just, so you're setting up a committee, so is the treasurer for, are you going to pay these people that come to the training, or are they going to come during work time, or are they after hours and you have to pay them? How are they going to get their training and what it's going to cost?
Every trainer is different. We've looked at many different opportunities right now for education for our employees. We hope to do it during work hours. We would have a treasurer because we're going to be doing fundraising to help alleviate some of the costs to the city.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mrs. Davis, the specifics of the ordinance creating the committee, some of the specifics are still being worked out as far as officers and so forth. Any monies that go to the committee obviously will be overseen ultimately by the finance director's office. Of course.
Mr. Tolet.
Through you, Mr. Chair. It was about a year ago, I believe we allocated $10,000, and it was for printed materials, lunches, miscellaneous expenses that this volunteer committee would have. Just, I wanted to remind everyone on both committees about that we have allocated funds for this already.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Sorry, Chair.
Yes, go right ahead.
One of the committee members would like to respond to the question regarding equity.
Sure, go right ahead.
I heard an example on equity that kind of resonated with me. So if we would give every 16-year-old a car in the city of Elyria, that means that they all are equal. They all have a car. But equity means, would they all be able to get their driver's license? Would they have the support and the funds needed to go through the driver training course? Would they have the ability to pass their driver's license test? So that is the difference between being equal and equality. And equity, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I will read the committee report. We have considered the matter of the creation of the Elyria Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. This is an ordinance authorizing the creation of this said committee. Can I get a motion from Community Development?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Schneider and seconded by Mr. Oswald.
Question.
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign. Aye.
Aye.
Can I get a motion from Finance?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Sayers. Any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further business for community development, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Schneider, seconded by Mrs. Mitchell.
Question.
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Oh, yeah, you're on that too. You don't want to sit through this? Oh, you've been at work all day?
Okay, we're going to continue on with Finance. First on the agenda is the approval of the Finance meeting minutes for May 22nd, 2023. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
By Mr. Schneider, second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Row number 2. We consider the matter of a moral claim filed by Ann Louise Lander of 135 Northfield Drive, Elyria. An ordinance authorizing payment of said moral claim submitted by Ann Louise Lander for damages to her vehicle. Estimated cost for repairs is $2,666.43. Can I get a motion just to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Mr.
Second.
Schneider, second by Mr. Tolet. Law Director Deere, if you want to start things off.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. This incident was a motor vehicle accident. One of our Elyria police officers was at fault. I would note that both parties, Mrs. Lander as well as the police officer, were covered by insurance. The two insurance companies did make Mrs. Lander whole, including the Mrs. Lander's insurance deductible pursuant to state law. We, as a municipality, are not authorized to reimburse any monies that have been paid by an insurance company, and therefore the claim was denied. As per procedure, instructions for filing a moral claim were provided, and that brings us here today. Just for your information, the specifics, it's Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 2744. If a claimant receives or is entitled to receive insurance benefits, a political subdivision that may be responsible for damages is liable only to the extent of the insurance deductible amount required by the insurance policy. I would note that the city's insurance company's Travelers actually covered the deductible amount here. That's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
If I could, Safety Service Director Lundy, then Mr. Tolet, did you want to add more to what was being?
Yeah, I think the law director covered it very well. The incident happened April 10th, and one of our patrolmen did hit the rear bumper of the Lander vehicle, and we understand that the deductible of $100 was paid. I know it's pursuant to Chapter 2744 of the Ohio Revised Code. The Landers had requested through our office that they wanted to bring their concern to council, and I know they also received a letter, I believe, dated June 16th from the law office laying out everything. But the Landers had requested the opportunity to come before council, and that's why we made the request to you.
Sure, thank you. I know, are the Landers here?
Yes.
Okay. If you please make your way up this way. Mr. Tolet?
That's what I was going to ask. If we have paid 100% of the cost of the vehicle and 100% of the deductible, that's what I'm trying to understand.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that the Landers insurance covered many of the, a big portion of the repairs, and therefore that is part of their issue, is that it was their insurance who covered the repairs.
Okay.
But I believe obviously they're in the best position to explain.
Thank you.
Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Brian Lander, 135 Northfield Drive, and I'm speaking on behalf of my wife, Ann Lander. Yes, I will agree that we were reimbursed by our insurance as well as the city's insurance for the $100 deductible. But, you know, you got to remember that now our insurance premiums are going to go up because we filed a claim. There's some other issues that we encountered along with this incident. One is the city doesn't appear to inform their employees of what to do in a case like this to get reimbursement. And it was only when Safety Service Director Lundy informed us of the process that we were finally able to get it done. But some of the employees said it would be totally covered. Some said, no way, and we were just very confused. Additionally, on May 19th, 2023, another issue came up when my wife received a phone call from the prosecutor's office stating he was trying to reduce this officer's charges so he wouldn't have the points added to his driver's license. While we don't want the officer to face any additional charges, this indicates to us that the city's interest lies in protecting their employees and not providing protection or assistance to its citizens. As an honest, hardworking city residents and taxpayers, we are formally requesting that the city rectify this situation by refunding our insurance, the portion that they paid towards the accident claim. Please show that you are willing to do what's right for its faithful residents. Additionally, we are requesting that the city create a standard operating procedure for these types of situations so that this process is streamlined, employees are aware of how it is handled, and no other resident will have to endure the challenging process that we have. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Landers, does the committee have any questions for Mr. Lander? Mr. Sarah?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not so much for him, but for possibly Ms. Deary. The two insurance companies, they don't get together and travelers reimburse the other party?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I can't speak to the specific inner workings of the insurance companies, but yes, they do typically work, yes, hand in hand to negotiate. Obviously, they don't always see eye to eye, but in this situation, yes, it was clear that our officer was at fault, and all that information would have been handed over to both insurance companies.
Thank you.
Could I say something to that? Our insurance company did try the subrogation route, but we're informed that they were not going to be reimbursed by the city for this.
Ms. Davis?
Or their insurance.
Through you, Chair. My question is, so we have an accident and we're at fault. And if we had insurance, I don't know why your insurance would pay anyway. I'm not understanding.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have an answer for that either. I know that our insurance in this situation, and obviously I don't speak, Mr. Lundy is here, he can speak for this, in any situation such as this, when any of our vehicles are involved in an accident, and especially if it's one of our employees, the city's insurance should be immediately notified with all the information.
Through you, Chair. So was our city insurance notified of when the accident happened?
That would, through you, Mr. Chair, that'd be a question obviously for administration. Through you, that would be a question for administration.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, to the councilwoman, anytime there's an accident, obviously the information is forwarded to the insurance company. The documentation was provided, and then the insurance companies negotiated, and this was the arrangement that was decided on.
But through you, Mr. Chair, so the situation is, however, the Landers, and correct me if I'm wrong, sir, have been obviously either directly reimbursed or through the repair of your vehicle. Your insurance covered that. So are you asking for council to reimburse your insurance company? Because obviously if council were to reimburse you.
Or your the city's insurance
Okay, well, so
company
we're not in the position to obviously tell our insurance company what to do. So what you're asking essentially through this claim process is for city council to essentially reimburse money. But by reimbursing you, that's not going to solve the problem with your insurance company.
No,
And you've already been righted by your insurance company. Are you looking for us then to somehow reimburse your insurance company so your premiums don't go up? And have you talked to your insurance company about this?
Yes.
And your insurance company has said that that will solve the problem of your premiums?
Yes.
They have. Would you be willing to get us some sort of documentation from them?
Well, we can ask them, yes.
Would you ask them?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody else on the committee have any questions in regards to that? Mr. Sarah?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and maybe I missed it, what kind of dollar amount are we talking about?
Well, what the report says here is, on the committee report is referred to as $2,666.43.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll table this, put it in pending items. Mr. Landers, if you can contact your insurance company and have them write up a documentation if indeed is the fact that if we reimburse and what that amount would be, reimburse them, and in writing that we reimburse them with stating that your premiums would not go on if you were reimbursed this amount. You can forward that on to the law director's office. And the law director's office and safety service director's office, just to kind of have it all hand in hand. We appreciate you coming up.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. Item number 3, we consider the matter of inactive delinquent public utility accounts, a resolution authorizing said delinquent accounts to be certified to Lorraine County Auditor's Office per the attached list. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sarah, second by Ms. Davis. Ms. Connor.
Good evening. Through you, Mr. Chair, is a list of about 24 accounts that are inactive and been finalized. A couple of them are multi-unit accounts. One of them is a sewer-only account. The resolution board met and has referred those forward through finance. So we've got a total of $12,671.31.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions in regards to what's presented?
Call for the question.
Question's been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Item number 4, the matter of amending of the rural Lorraine County Water Authority Agreement. You consider the matter of amending the Lorraine County Rural Water Authority Water Supply Agreement for services in the Chestnut Commons area. In order to authorizing the amendment to the said agreement to reflect the extension of the 2023 rates through December 31st, 2023. Emergency clause is requested due to the effective date of 7/1 of 2023. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sarah, second by Ms. Davis. Ms. Connor?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The city of Elyria provides the water to the businesses over at Chestnut Commons, even though it is in the Rural Water County Water Authority District. What they do is we give them a reimbursement. They've extended their contract for 6 additional months, and this 10-year contract is up for review in December of 2024.
Right. Okay. This is standard. Does anybody have any questions? Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 5, we've considered the matter of property lien and boarding up and securing the property located at 264 Windsor Drive. Mr. Farkas, I understand, has this been removed?
Mr. Chair, yes, this lien has been satisfied and paid in full per confirmation of the Safety Service Director on July 5th.
Okay. We've considered a matter of placing lien on the property, boarding up and securing 309 East Broad Street in the amount of $270.69. A resolution is authorizing the said charge to be certified as a lien to Lorraine County Auditor's Office per the attached. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Sarah, second by Ms. Davis. Mr. Farkas?
Mr. Chair, through you, this emergency board up was initiated by the Elyria Police Department and resulted in the need for securing the structure.
Okay. Is there any further discussion?
No question. Call for the question.
Mr. Farkas, have they been invoiced already? Do you know?
Yes, purchase order and invoice.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. We don't have an item 7, we have an item 8 by Ms. Happ, I guess. Item number 8, we consider the matter of placing a lien on the property for boarding up and securing at 446 11th Street in the amount of $265.72. A resolution authorizing the said charge to be certified as a lien to Lorraine County Auditor's Office per the attached. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Schneider,
Second.
second by Mr. Sarah. Mr. Farkas?
Mr. Chair, again, this was instituted by the Elyria Police in regards to an emergency board up.
Okay. We'll just hold that it's all been sent out to as well, the invoice?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Call for the question.
Question's been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 9, consider the matter of a property lien of boarding up and securing at 826 West Avenue in the amount of $187.87. A resolution authorizing the said charge to be certified as a lien to Lorraine County Auditor's Office per the attached. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider. I guess this would follow proper protocol again, Mr.
Yes, Mr. Chair, same scenario, initiated by Elyria Police, emergency board up.
Thank you. Item number 10. We consider matter of placing a lien on the property for boarding up and securing at 382 First Street in the amount of $1,015.85. A resolution authorizing the said charge to be certified as a lien to Lorraine County Auditor's Office per the attached. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sarah,
And
second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Mr. Farkas, as we go down, if things haven't changed, I think we'll.
This one was initiated by us, the building department, for emergency board up.
It was still initiated.
Mhm. We consider placing a lien on the boarding up and securing at 207 Warren Avenue in the amount of $301.12. A resolution authorizing the said charge to be placed as certified lien to the Lorraine County Auditor's Office per the attached. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Schneider, moved by Mr. Sarah, second by Mr. Schneider. Is there any discussion? Mr. Farkas?
Mr. Chair, through you, initiated by Elyria Police for emergency board up.
Any further discussion?
Call for the question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Number 12, consider a matter of placing a lien on the property for boarding up and securing at 250 Harrison Street in the amount of $106.84. A resolution authorizing said charge to be certified as a lien to Lorraine County Auditor's Office for the attached. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Davis,
Second.
second by Mr. Sarah. Discussion, Mr. Farkas?
Mr. Chair, through you, again, initiated by Elyria Police for emergency board up.
Any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay. Motion carried. On number 13, we've considered a matter of placing a lien on the property for boarding up and securing at 2040 Midway Boulevard in the amount of $207.84. Please note, this is a second boarding up. A resolution authorizing the said charges to be certified as a lien to Lorraine County offices per the attached. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Schneider. Mr. Farkas?
Mr. Chair, through you, same scenario, Elyria Police, board up.
Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Farkas. Item number 14. This is a two-part. Right. We've considered the matter of finding the city has an engineering department of a F-150 truck that is unfit for public use. A resolution authorizing the safety service director to declare said city property no longer needed and unfit for public use. Can I get a motion? Moved by Mr. Snyder, second by Ms. Davis. Engineer McKillips? Seems pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. Our department does have an F-150 truck, 2018, that has about 35,000 miles on it, but it has a very bad knocking in the engine, continues to get worse. We've had the dealership take a look at it a few times, and they say there's nothing they can do about it. We don't know exactly what the problem is. So due to the current condition of it, it's still drivable, it still operates. We'd like to, get as much bang for a buck out of what's left of it, and dispose of it.
Okay. Is there, Ms. Davis?
Through you, Chair. So this vehicle is 5 years old, and it's got a knock in the motor?
Yes.
Did you take it back to where you bought it from?
Yes, several times.
And there's nothing they can do?
Correct. They cannot find any issue with it. We've talked with other mechanics, and for whatever reason, this one model of engine is prone to have these issues.
My next question, through you, Chair. So I know that Ford has a number that you can call. This truck isn't that old, and it has a knock. If they know that this has a knock in that this engine is a problem, I think they need to come in and look at it. I have the number. I have the number. And they will send representatives in to look at this problem. That's what they have the number for. 5 years old and you got a knock and nobody know how to fix it. Something is wrong with this problem. They're not built like that.
Well, I think we should take that under advisement, if they have someone to come in and take a look at it.
Let's
So
table this one.
So we would table these two items here. If Ms. Davis, you can kind of refer that to Ms. McKillips and then Safety Service Director Pulaski, so that we can kind of get this on the board to get it resolved. Appreciate your input on that. Thank you. Got some connections at Ford. Thank you. Okay. Item number 15, we consider the matter of charging a fee for the use of Elyria charging ports in City Hall lot. The committee report. We consider the matter of charging the use of electric vehicle charging ports in the rear of the City Hall parking lot. An ordinance authoring the said fee. State of emergency applies. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sierra, second by Mr. Schneider. Ms. McKillips.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this item I'd like to have for discussion only. I'm requesting that no action take place tonight.
Okay.
It was maybe 18 months, 2 years ago, the city received a $15,000 grant from the Ohio EPA to install the electric vehicle charging unit in the rear of our parking lot. It's a 2-port unit, so we can charge 2 vehicles at one time. The grant covered the cost of the equipment and the installation, and 2 years, or actually 3 years of service from the provider that operates the website for the charging unit. Up to this point, the fee has been free. You can go on to any of the websites that show charging units, and for ours, it's free. Actually, the last time I checked, this charging unit is the only one that would show up on like SharePoint or is it PlugShare? There's a couple of different websites I've looked at. But again, to this point, the city's been covering the cost of any vehicles that's been charging on that unit. So now we are reached the point where we need to look at getting ourselves reimbursed, recoup the electricity costs that are being utilized by whether they're employees, residents, out-of-towners, you know, because it shows up on these websites, and some of you may already know, and they see that it's free, anyone can come in and take advantage of the units. And I've seen through reports, through the website that, you know, we have people on these 24 hours a day. So they are being used. Past 4 months specifically, we've been pretty steady as far as the usage of the units. So what we've taken a look at is how much should we charge? And you take a look at all those websites, you know, we pulled some information regarding what other people are charging, anywhere from 15 cents a kilowatt hour to $1.55 a kilowatt hour. Some other places charge per hour for the amount of time that your vehicle is actually hooked up to the unit. A lot of places where you'll see that vehicle chargers are at a location where, you know, you could be the patron of the business, or maybe you're looking at buying a new vehicle, that type of place. A lot of times they're free though there. However, we're government, we need to get reimbursed. So one of the things that we're looking at, again, is a per kilowatt hour price. We're also looking at whether we set a number, a flat rate, or is there a way to set a, you know, like a not to exceed number? And the reason why we suggest that is right now the vehicles are using it, it's free and being used quite a bit. You know, to recoup our costs, we would have to charge 27 cents per kilowatt hour on average. If we start charging, let's say 30 cents a kilowatt hour, then, you know, I know there's a couple people that would no longer use those units because now they're being charged. They can just go home and charge their vehicle, so there's no use in doing it here if they have to pay. So then we'd have to figure what is our, you know, reimbursement cost at that point, because the usage, will the usage decrease? Maybe. Will it stay steady? Maybe if we get other people that find out that we do have a unit here. Yes, it charges, but hey, they still need to, you know, they have to charge their vehicle, so maybe they don't have any other reason or no other place to do this. So the not to exceed limit would allow us to increase the fee based on the actual usage, because the more kilowatts that are put out through this 2 units, the cheaper it gets on the kilowatt hour basis. So just wanted to give you, again, some information on what we're looking at, and if anyone has any suggestions, you're familiar with other places that charge, or, you know, maybe instead of looking at a kilowatt hour charge, maybe we should be looking at a per hour charge. You know, this is new territory for the city. It's new territory from NOACA. I mean, I reached out to NOACA to see what information they've gathered, and they don't have anything pulled together, you know, on their own. So we're in the process of gathering that information ourselves, but just reaching out to see, you know, gather whatever information we can and gather any suggestions.
Mr. Tolet? I have a few comments about this, and excuse me, I'm going to express my opinion. I am a believer in electric is our future for vehicles. And this question is not meant to be a smart aleck. How many of our employees do we allow to use gas pumps at all of our facilities for their personal vehicles?
City gas pumps?
Yeah.
Oh, 0?
Exactly. What's the reason for that? Liability and expense. We have an enormous liability with this. Enormous liability. Another thing, we have collective bargaining agreements within the city, different unions. We have this at one facility. Are we being unfair that those that work at Central Maintenance Garage don't have this same benefit? I know it's for the public. The bigger this becomes, and we are right at this transition stage, I think both Ford, GM have all announced that they will surpass 15% of all vehicles made in 23 will be electric. So now might not be the time for us to learn our lesson on this. I'm throwing that out. That's the first thing, was the liability piece of it. If a member of the public pulls up and I was here first, and the fight breaks out on city property over who gets to sit and charge their vehicle for the next 30 minutes, who's liable? We are. I'm sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to be devil's advocate, I would suggest that perhaps these should have been conversations that we had before they were installed out in the parking lot. And as far as liability, I think that once we get into a pay situation, that's a contractual relationship, and there actually could be less liability once we are charging people rather than inviting people onto our property and allowing them to use it for free, which is the situation we have now. So, one question I did have for through you, Mr. Chair, is are there any restrictions based on the grants that we received, as far as making sure we have a perfect balance, so it's not becoming a for-profit situation versus just recouping our expenses or anything like that?
We are permitted to recoup our costs.
Ms. Davis, and then Ms.
Through you, Chair, I'd like to ask Mr. Valesky, have you seen enormous increase in our utility bill? Can we have like, what was the increase since we've installed it? And I've seen several cars out here charging over the weekend passing by. So I'd just like to know what kind of increase have we had?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we get so many electric bills, I would have to page through them to find out if they're submitting one bill for that charging station. I don't have that answer for you right now, but I can look into it. I can tell you that we have one employee at City Hall that charges regularly, and I'm kind of surprised that somebody with a regular vehicle hasn't come up and asked me to pay for their gas, to be honest with you.
Mr. Oswald?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not on the committee, but I can't believe this thing wasn't put in with you gotta put your credit card in before it starts type thing. I mean, it's like everywhere you go, you get gas, if for buying electricity, when you go to Giant Eagle, I believe you have to put in your credit card sheets. You put in your credit card, you get so much time. Why wasn't there nothing like that incorporated with these? It's just like an open port, and I don't get that one.
Well, that's what we're discussing today is how do we want to go about attaching a fee to it? We can attach a fee to it today. All I have to do is go on the computer and type it in, and we can start charging. I just don't have legislation for it right now.
Oh, I think that was pretty easy, what you just said. You just do that. Thank you.
Mr. Schneider?
Through you, Mr. Chair, do we have any plans on any more of these being put up on any city properties or anything like that? Or is this kind of like we're done, this is it? Can you answer that?
All I can tell you is that one day someone said we got a grant to install these units, and I was put in charge to get it installed and get it up and running. So as far as I know, no one else has requested or has submitted for grants money for these, but again, I came on the back end of it all.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion or comments?
I do have one more question. Did we have to, through you, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Did you have to get permits to install these?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, through the building department for electrical.
Do we have a separate liability rider on these? You know how if we open up a new park, we have an insurance rider, a separate?
I do not know.
Well, I think there was good conversation here. I think good conversation and discussion. So if, we can kind of gather some information as Ms. McKillops, and then we'll come up with, or we'll just put this in pending items. We'll have it at the next Finance Committee meeting to attribute more conversation and determine a kilowatt rate. Right? Very good. Put a sign out there that says no public use. Some either. Okay. Item number 16, we've considered the matter of authorizing the mayor to submit an application for the grant and/or loan for OPWC projects, round 38 for the year of 2024. In order to authorize the mayor to submit an application, grants funds and accept funds from the OPWC 2024 street program projects, which is attached to here, standard emergency applies due to application deadline. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Davis.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sarah. Engineer McKillop.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Applications are due September 1st of this year. This is a program that we participate in every year in the past 37 years, I believe. This year, we're looking at applying for paving dollars for Abbey Road between University Ave and East Broad Street, Furnace Street between Lake Ave and West River Road, West River Road between Furnace and 57, Leona Street between Griswold and Midway, and then Midway Boulevard between Tillotson and West River.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or what's being considered here?
Question?
Question's been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. We consider the matter of the amendments to the 2023 permanent appropriations. An ordinance authorizing amending ordinance number 2023-34, permanent appropriation changes as per the attached. Finance Director Pileski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have two this evening. Earlier in the meeting, we discussed several board ups, and them board ups have kind of depleted the operating and maintenance account in the building department. And Mr. Farkas would like to proceed with a few demolitions, so I'm proposing that we move $50,000 from salary and wages, $50,000 from benefits and pension, and moving $100,000 to operating and maintenance, particularly the demolition minor line item within operating and maintenance, so he can get started on the demos that he wants to get done. And the second one is to appropriate the monies for the Cleveland Street East Bridge Street Improvement Project. So this is adding $6,644,038 to capital outlay in that fund. Approximately 46% of that amount is funded by a federal grant through NOACA. Approximately 27% is funded from a grant from the Ohio Department of Transportation, and the remaining approximately 27% is the city share, which will be funded by a state infrastructure bank loan that we will pay off over a long term, 10 years.
10 years. Okay. Anybody have any questions on the appropriation amendments? Ms. Davis?
Through you, Chair. So, Mr. Pileski, is the $6,645,038, is that going to be all, or can you go back and ask for more money on this state infrastructure bank loan?
I believe we have authorization. I believe, is it $2 million, Kathy Lee? $2 million on the state infrastructure bank loan. So I think there's a little bit of leeway there in case there is change orders. But I believe the bids are already in, actually, and the bids came in lower than anticipated. There may be a change order or two, but I think we'll be okay.
Thank you.
Can we do the remaining walks? Okay. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. There's nothing more before this committee. I entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sarah, second by Mr. Shea. Is there any further more discussion?
Question?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you. Don't leave. We got a couple of committee reports over here.
The insurance company should go after the insurance company if they want to reimburse. It happens all the time. They just wanted to. What was the total amount? 2,000 or something? Yeah. Probably not gonna go anyway. We did $100 deductible, so they got a bill for 25. The insurance company.